So how do we make a meaningful 21st century religion out of all of this? What fascinates me, I guess why I've been obsessed with these several weeks now, is the persistence of religion among human beings. The persistence of religion, not only among pre-Enlightenment human beings, whether they are intentionally so or naturally so, but the persistence of this desire to express our world in religious ideas. We create the religion that we need to explain and predict the world as we encounter it. But supernatural religion became useless. It was a useless explainer of our natural world, and we could no longer participate in it because the cognitive dissonance that it would require just became overwhelming. And we couldn't hold these two opposite truths in the same embrace. So we now need a different kind of religion. We now need a religion that in fact may have two gods, little g. We need a religion with a bifurcated Godhead. The science God explains and predicts our physical world. But the science God is also inadequate to explain our social world. We still need a spirit God. We still need a spirit God that explains and predicts our social and public world. We still need a spirit God that tells us how we ought to interact with these other animals that we recognize as human beings, because they speak words to us that impact us. They speak words to us that have an impact or meaning to us. How should we relate to one another in this social world in which we participate exclusively as human beings? We need a religion that explains and predicts those interactions, because that's the world in which we live. So as we define the Spirit God, we define the Spirit God in terms that bring meaning to our relationships. And so we say things like, God is love. We say things like, God is joy. We say things like, God is peace. We say things like, God is justice. And by saying these things, we then begin to explain and hopefully predict how we're going to live together as human beings. These ideals become the objects and goals of our social lives. Cupid says something very curious. He says, God does not exist, but I still advocate that we believe in God. We believe in God in order that we might have these relationships that are meaningful, full of meaning, so that when we encounter one another as human beings, there's life. So just quickly, a two-point example of how this 21st century religion explains and predicts our world. On the ballot this fall will be an initiative to overturn the state constitution, which currently grants the right of all people, regardless of gender or sexual orientation, to marry another human being. Now, those whose God is at the city center square, whose words have been preserved in the tombs, the libraries of their seminaries, whose words cannot be altered or changed because they don't recognize them as human speech. They have enshrined their words as divine speech. And the thing that drives me crazy, and I remember from my days back in the church, that other church, they would stand up and declare, God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. How boring. But that is the central claim of these kinds of religions, because to admit that the God that they have worshiped can change is to admit that the God that they worship ain't the God that they thought it was. But we who understand that it is the power of our words to articulate a religion that explains meaningfully to us the world in which we live and allows us to predict how interactions in that world will take place, can go to our God and we can ask our God questions. We can say to our God, hey God, what about gay marriage? Should it be or should it not be? And we can hear the words from our God say, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. And then we can declare that the relationships that human beings have, oh yes, there are explanations that come forth from the biology God that explains the whole range of attraction, from opposite attraction to same gender loving attraction. Yeah, we've got the biology God to help us on that, but it is the love God that tells us that two human beings that love each other profoundly can eat and drink, enjoy their toil, and live their lives meaningfully as human beings. And we can predict that our relationships with them will not destroy our own marriages, will not cause the city gates to crumble, and will not allow invading hordes to be victorious. And then there's death, sickness, and death. You know, most of religion really deals with sickness and death. We want to know what our fate will be. We want to be able to predict what our fate will be. And so we pray to this God to reveal to us whether we shall be healed or whether we shall die. And then if the God says we shall die, then we want to know even more. And what of my soul? And so on and so on. But we have found that type of religion inadequate to explain our physical demise, how it breaks our hearts to have people invade, and I can think of no other word, invade the sanctity of someone's dying moments, to inveigh upon them that unless they believe in the God that they believe in, they're going to some place called hell. They don't need to die to get there. In that moment, they have arrived. So that religion doesn't work for us because we know good people die young, too young. And I commend again your reading of Ecclesiastes. I know we all know there's a time to live and a time to die, a time to pick up stones and a time to throw stones. Read the whole book. You will be blessed, and it'll take you less than an afternoon. But there again, he goes over and over again how it does not matter. I've seen the righteous live as righteous but die as the wicked. I've seen the wicked live as the wicked and die as the righteous. It all is vanity.